Captain Ethan Drake was no stranger to danger. A seasoned explorer and pilot, he had navigated his ship, the Starseeker, through asteroid fields, cosmic storms, and interplanetary wars. Yet nothing in his years of experience could have prepared him for the day everything went wrong. It started as a routine mission. Ethan and his crew were charting a new trade route through the Orion sector, a relatively unexplored region of space known for its volatile cosmic phenomena. The mission was supposed to be straightforward. Just a few weeks of mapping and data collection before returning to the safety of the Alliance space. But the universe had other plans. Without warning, a massive storm formed in the depths of space, a swirling vortex of dark energy that appeared out of nowhere. Ethan's sensors had barely enough time to register the anomaly before the Starseeker was caught in its grasp. The ship's systems went haywire, and alarms blared as the crew struggled to regain control. "Brace for impact," Ethan shouted over the chaos, his voice barely audible over the sound of metal groaning under the pressure. The storm pulled the ship off course, dragging it towards a distant, unknown planet. The last thing Ethan remembered before everything went black was the sight of the planet's purple surface rushing up to meet them. When Ethan awoke, he was alone. The once pristine interior of the Starseeker was now a twisted wreck of shattered consoles and sparking wires. The air was thick with smoke, and the smell of burning metal stung his nose. He groaned, wincing as he pushed himself upright, pain radiating from a deep gash on his forehead. "Crew, report," he rasped into his wrist communicator, but only static answered him. He forced himself to stand, his legs shaky beneath him. The crew, he had to find them. But as he staggered towards the remains of the ship's cockpit, it became clear that there was little chance of rescue. The ship was beyond repair, and the vast expanse of the jungle-like landscape outside offered no signs of civilization. Ethan stumbled through the wreckage, gathering whatever supplies he could salvage. A medkit, a few rations, a plasma pistol with only a few charges left. The reality of his situation began to sink in. He was stranded, possibly the only survivor of the crash, on an uncharted planet in a hostile sector of space. His mind raced, trying to formulate a plan, but all he could do for the moment was survive. With the sun setting, Ethan decided to explore the area around the crash site before darkness fell completely. He stepped out of the ship and into the unknown. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, but the air was thick and humid, making it hard to catch his breath. The ground beneath his boots was soft and covered in strange bioluminescent plants that pulsed with an eerie light. The trees towered above him, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their leaves shimmering with an iridescent sheen. As he ventured deeper into the jungle, Ethan's senses were on high alert. The alien flora seemed to whisper as he passed, and the calls of unknown creatures echoed in the distance. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves set his nerves on edge. Despite the beauty of the place, there was an underlying sense of menace, as if the planet itself was alive and watching him. Just as he was considering turning back to the safety of the ship, Ethan heard a soft rustling behind him. He spun around, plasma pistol in hand, but saw nothing. His heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the area, eyes straining in the dim light. Then, from the shadows, they emerged. At first, he could barely make them out. Figures moving with incredible grace, their forms blending seamlessly with the surrounding foliage. But as they stepped into the light of the bioluminescent plants, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. They were humanoid, but unlike any species he had ever encountered. Their skin was a metallic silver, reflecting the light in a way that made them seem ethereal, almost otherworldly. Intricate patterns, glowing softly, were etched into their skin, forming what looked like tribal tattoos. The leader of the group, a tall woman with an air of authority, approached him. Her eyes were a striking emerald green, vibrant against her silver complexion. Her hair, if it could even be called that, flowed like liquid metal down her back, catching the light with every movement. She studied Ethan with a gaze that was both curious and wary, as if trying to determine whether he was a threat. "You are on sacred ground, outsider," she said, her voice melodic yet firm. The words were spoken in a language Ethan didn't recognize, but somehow he understood her meaning perfectly. I am Lyria, High Priestess of the Zalani tribe. You will come with us?" Ethan hesitated, gripping his plasma pistol tightly. But as he looked around, he realized he was surrounded. More of the tribe had appeared, their eyes all fixed on him, weapons at the ready. It was clear he had no choice. He holstered his weapon and nodded, trying to appear non-threatening. Lyria gave a slight nod in return, and with a graceful motion she turned and began to lead the way into the jungle. Ethan followed, flanked by the silent, watchful members of the tribe. As they moved deeper into the forest, the sounds of the jungle grew louder, and the air grew thicker, almost oppressive. Ethan's mind raced with questions. Who were these people? How had they survived on this seemingly hostile planet? And most importantly, what did they intend to do with him? The path they followed led to a clearing, where Ethan's eyes widened in astonishment. The village was unlike anything he had ever seen. The homes were built into the massive trees, their architecture a seamless blend of natural elements and advanced technology. Glowing vines draped from the branches, illuminating the area with a soft ambient light. The air was filled with the scent of exotic flowers, and the sounds of alien birds echoed through the canopy. Ethan was led to the center of the village where Lyria turned to face him. "You are a stranger here," she said, her voice softer now, almost contemplative. "But you have been brought to us for a reason. The planet does not make mistakes." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, Lyria gestured to the other members of the tribe, who stepped forward to encircle him. Their eyes glowed with a strange light, and Ethan felt a sudden rush of energy, as if the very air around him was alive. The sensation was overwhelming, and he fought to stay conscious as the world around him seemed to blur and shift. "Rest now, outsider," Lyria's voice echoed in his mind as his vision darkened. "Your journey has only just begun." And with that, Ethan Drake, a man who had always been in control of his own destiny, was plunged into a world where nothing was as it seemed, and where his survival would depend not just on his wits and skills, but on the will of a planet and the enigmatic tribe that called it home. Ethan awoke to the sound of unfamiliar chanting, a low melodic hum that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. His eyelids fluttered open, and he found himself lying on a soft, woven mat inside a large, circular hut. The structure was illuminated by a warm amber light that filtered through the walls, which appeared to be made from a translucent material resembling silk, yet stronger. The scent of incense filled the air, calming yet strangely intoxicating. Slowly, Ethan sat up, his body aching from the crash and the strange energies he had felt in the village. His memories of the previous night were hazy, but he recalled being surrounded by the Zalani tribe, their eyes glowing as they chanted in unison. It had felt like they were probing his mind, searching for something deep within him. The sensation had been unsettling, yet not entirely unpleasant. As his senses adjusted, he noticed that the entrance to the hut was draped with thick, leafy vines. Beyond them, the chanting grew louder, and curiosity pulled him to his feet. He pushed the vines aside and stepped out into the village. The scene before him was breathtaking. The village was alive with activity, the Zalani women moving gracefully as they prepared for some kind of ritual. They were adorned in ceremonial garb, their metallic skin gleaming in the morning light. Intricate patterns of paint and beads decorated their bodies, enhancing their natural beauty and giving them an almost ethereal presence. The whole village seemed to pulse with energy, as if the planet itself was preparing for something momentous. Ethan's gaze was drawn to the center of the village, where a massive tree stood, its trunk twisting and turning like a living sculpture. The tree's bark shimmered with the same bioluminescent patterns he had seen on the tribe's skin, and its branches reached high into the sky, intertwining with the other trees to form a natural canopy. The tree was ancient, its roots spreading out like veins, connecting to the earth and the village around it. As he approached, Lyria appeared from behind the tree, her emerald eyes locking onto his. She was dressed in a flowing robe made of the same translucent material as the walls of the hut, the fabric catching the light and reflecting it in a myriad of colors. Her hair, still flowing like liquid metal, was braided with vines and flowers, giving her an otherworldly, almost divine appearance. Ethan, she greeted him, her voice carrying a tone of both authority and warmth. You are awake just in time. The bonding ritual is about to begin. Ethan frowned, trying to make sense of her words. Bonding ritual, what is that? And why do I have to participate? Lyria's expression softened, and she stepped closer, her presence calming yet commanding. You are not of this world, yet you have been brought here by the will of the planet. The bonding ritual is our way of welcoming you, of ensuring your survival in this environment. Without it, the planet's energies could overwhelm you, and you would not last long here. Ethan's mind raced. He had encountered many alien cultures during his travels, but this was different. There was a mysticism to the Zolani, a deep connection to the planet that went beyond simple belief. They weren't just surviving here, they were thriving in harmony with the world around them. And now, they were offering him a chance to be a part of that. What does this ritual involve? He asked, his voice tinged with caution. Lyria gestured for him to follow her to the base of the ancient tree. As they walked, she explained, the bonding ritual is a sacred ceremony that ties an outsider to our world. It will allow you to sense the planet's rhythms, to communicate with its creatures, and to live as we do. But it is not without risk. The planet's energy is powerful, and the bond it forms is eternal. Ethan hesitated. The idea of being bound to this alien world, of becoming part of something so foreign, was both terrifying and exhilarating. But what choice did he have? Without this bond, he would remain an outsider, vulnerable to the planet's dangers, and unable to truly understand the Zolani. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. All right, I'll do it. Lyria smiled, a mixture of relief and approval in her eyes. Good. Then let us begin. The village gathered around the tree as Lyria led Ethan to a small clearing at its base. The ground was soft and covered in a thick, mossy carpet that seemed to glow faintly under his feet. Lyria gestured for him to sit, and he lowered himself onto the ground, feeling the energy of the planet pulsating through the earth. Lyria took her place opposite him, her hands raised as she began to chant in the ancient language of the Zolani. The other women joined in, their voices rising in a harmonious chorus that echoed through the trees. The air around them grew thick with energy, and Ethan felt a strange warmth spreading through his body, as if the planet itself was reaching out to him. As the chanting intensified, the tree began to glow, its patterns of light pulsing in time with the rhythm of the ritual. Ethan's vision blurred, and he felt a powerful force pulling at him, drawing him deeper into the earth, into the heart of the planet. His mind flooded with images, vast forests, roaring rivers, towering mountains, all connected by the same vibrant energy. He could feel the planet's heartbeat, a steady, rhythmic pulse that resonated with his own. Then, as the ritual reached its climax, the energy surged through him, overwhelming his senses. He gasped as the force of the bond took hold, linking him to the planet in a way that was both intimate and eternal. He could feel the thoughts and emotions of the Zolani around him, their connection to the world as deep as his own. And at the center of it all was Lyria, her presence a beacon of strength and serenity. When the ritual finally ended, the chanting subsided, and the energy around him began to fade. Ethan opened his eyes, feeling both exhausted and revitalized. The world seemed different now, more vivid, more alive. He could hear the whispers of the trees, the songs of the birds, and the distant calls of creatures he had never seen. He was no longer just a man stranded on an alien planet. He was part of this world, bound to it by the ritual's powerful magic. Lyria reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch grounding him in the here and now. It is done, Ethan. You are one of us now. Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of belonging that he hadn't realized he was missing. Yet along with that sense of belonging came a profound responsibility. He was tied to this world, to its people and its fate, and he knew that his journey was far from over. As the village began to disperse, returning to their daily lives, Lyria remained by his side. The bond is strong, she said softly, stronger than I expected. You have a unique connection to this planet, Ethan. You were meant to be here. Ethan met her gaze, the weight of her words sinking in. What does that mean? What am I supposed to do now? Lyria smiled gently, her eyes filled with wisdom and mystery. You will learn in time. For now, rest. There is much to discover, and the planet will reveal its secrets when you are ready. Ethan nodded, feeling both excited and apprehensive about what lay ahead. He had survived the crash, faced the unknown, and forged a bond with an alien world. But as he looked out over the village, the towering trees, and the vast jungle beyond, he knew that his greatest challenges were yet to come. For the first time in his life, Ethan Drake felt truly alive, connected to something greater than himself, part of a world that was as beautiful as it was dangerous. And as he lay down to rest, the whispers of the planet lulling him to sleep, he couldn't help but wonder what destiny awaited him in this strange and wondrous place. The days following the bonding ritual were a whirlwind of new experiences for Ethan. Every sense was heightened, every moment charged with the energy of the planet. He could feel the subtle vibrations of the earth beneath his feet, the faint hum of life in the air, and the whispers of the trees as they swayed in the wind. The bond had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand, tying him to the Zalani tribe and the planet itself in a profound, almost spiritual manner. But with this new connection came challenges, trials that would test his limits and force him to confront the reality of his new existence. The call to battle. One morning, as the three suns rose in the violet sky, casting their eerie light over the village, Ethan was awakened by a sharp, urgent voice in his mind. It was Lyria, her tone filled with urgency. "Ethan, come to the great tree. We are under threat." He bolted upright, grabbing his plasma pistol, a relic of his former life, before rushing out of his hut. The village was in chaos. The Zalani women moved with swift precision, gathering weapons and preparing for battle. The once peaceful atmosphere was now charged with tension, and the ground seemed to tremble beneath Ethan's feet, echoing the unease of the planet. As Ethan approached the great tree, Lyria was already there, her face set in a grim expression. She was surrounded by the village's warriors, each one adorned with ceremonial armor made from the planet's resources, lightweight yet incredibly strong. Their eyes glowed with the same intensity as when he first met them, but now there was a fierce determination in their gaze. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyria turned to him, her expression softening slightly. "The Karnak has awakened. It is an ancient beast, one that has slumbered for centuries in the deep jungle. Our ancestors sealed it away, but something has disturbed its rest. It is coming for us, and it will destroy everything in its path." Ethan's heart pounded. He had heard of the Karnak from the tribe's stories, an enormous creature, more myth than reality, with scales harder than any metal and claws that could tear through stone. The thought of facing such a monster filled him with dread, but there was no time for fear. The tribe needed him, and the bond he shared with the planet meant he couldn't turn away. "I'll fight," he said firmly, gripping his pistol. "But how do we stop something like that?" Lyria nodded, acknowledging his resolve. "The Karnak is not invincible. It is connected to the planet just as we are. If we can sever that connection, we can weaken it. But it will require a great deal of power, more than we can summon alone." Ethan understood immediately. The bond he shared with the planet, the energy he had felt during the ritual, was the key. "You need me to channel the planet's energy, don't you?" "Yes," Lyria confirmed. "You are the only one who can. The bond has made you our strongest link to the planet's life force. But it will not be easy. The Karnak will resist, and the strain on your body and mind will be immense." Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle ahead. "I'm ready." The battle begins. The village warriors, along with Ethan and Lyria, set out into the jungle, following the faint tremors in the earth that marked the Karnak's approach. The air grew thick with tension as they moved deeper into the forest, the towering trees casting long shadows over the group. The jungle, once a place of vibrant life, now felt ominous, as if holding its breath in anticipation of the coming storm. As they neared the Karnak's resting place, the ground began to shake violently, and a deafening roar echoed through the trees. The creature emerged from the dense foliage, and Ethan's blood ran cold at the sight. The Karnak was colossal, towering over the trees, its scales shimmering like obsidian in the dim light. Its eyes burned with a malevolent intelligence, and its jaws, lined with razor-sharp teeth, dripped with venom. The warriors spread out, circling the beast, their weapons at the ready. Lyria stepped forward, her voice ringing out with a powerful command. "Ethan, now!" Ethan focused, reaching deep within himself to tap into the bond he shared with the planet. He could feel the energy pulsing beneath his feet, a vast, untapped reservoir of power. With great effort, he began to draw that energy into himself, channeling it through his body and out towards the Karnak. The effect was immediate. The ground beneath the creature's feet began to crack and shift as the planet's energy responded to Ethan's call. Vines shot up from the earth, wrapping around the Karnak's legs and slowing its advance. The beast roared in fury, thrashing against the restraints, but Ethan held firm, pouring more of the planet's power into the attack. The warriors took advantage of the creature's momentary distraction, launching their own assault. They moved with incredible speed and precision, their weapons slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. But despite their efforts, the Karnak's scales deflected most of their attacks, and the beast's thrashing made it difficult to get close. Ethan gritted his teeth, feeling the strain on his body as he continued to channel the energy. It was like holding back a flood with nothing but his bare hands, the sheer force of the planet's power threatening to overwhelm him. Sweat poured down his face, and his vision blurred, but he couldn't afford to falter. The tribe was depending on him. Suddenly the Karnak reared back, tearing itself free from the vines with a massive burst of strength. The ground shook as it slammed its claws into the earth, sending shockwaves through the jungle. Several warriors were thrown off their feet, and Ethan felt the planet's energy slip from his grasp. "Ethan!" Lyria's voice cut through the chaos, filled with concern and urgency. "You must hold on, we are close." But Ethan was at his limit. His body ached with exhaustion, and his mind was clouded with pain. He could feel the bond fraying, the connection to the planet weakening. If he lost control now, the Karnak would destroy them all. Then, in the midst of his despair, Ethan felt a presence beside him. It was Lyria, her hand on his shoulder, her energy flowing into him like a lifeline. She was sharing her strength with him, reinforcing the bond, helping him to focus. "We can do this," she whispered, her voice a balm to his frayed nerves. "Together." Ethan nodded, drawing on Lyria's strength as he renewed his efforts. The planet's energy surged back into him, stronger than before, and he channeled it towards the Karnak with renewed determination. This time the effect was even more pronounced. The ground erupted beneath the creature, spewing forth a torrent of roots and vines that ensnared its massive form. The Karnak bellowed in rage, but it was clear that the tide had turned. The warriors pressed their attack, focusing on the creature's weakened limbs, their strikes finding purchase between its scales. As the battle raged on, Ethan pushed himself harder than he ever thought possible, channeling every ounce of energy he could muster into the assault. The planet responded, its power coursing through him like a living thing, amplifying his strength. The bond was no longer just a connection, it was a partnership, a melding of his will with the planet's own. Finally, with one last, desperate effort, Ethan unleashed a surge of energy that tore through the Karnak's defenses. The ground beneath the creature split open, and the earth itself seemed to rise up against it. The Karnak let out a final thunderous roar before it was engulfed by the planet, dragged down into the depths from which it had come. The jungle fell silent. The ground stopped trembling, and the air grew still. The battle was over. The aftermath. Ethan collapsed to his knees, utterly spent. His vision swam, and his limbs felt like lead, but there was a deep sense of relief in his heart. They had won. The Karnak was defeated, and the village was safe. Lyria knelt beside him, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "You did it, Ethan," she said softly, her voice filled with admiration. "You saved us." Ethan managed a weak smile, but the victory felt bittersweet. The bond had saved them, but it had also changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. He was no longer the man he had been when he first arrived on this planet. The connection he shared with the Zalani and the world they inhabited had become a part of him, inextricable and eternal. As the warriors tended to the wounded and the village began to recover from the battle, Ethan and Lyria sat together in the clearing, the weight of their victory settling over them like a blanket. "What happens now?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Lyria looked at him, her eyes filled with a wisdom that belied her years. "Now we rebuild, and you, Ethan, must learn to live with the bond you have forged. The planet has accepted you as one of its own, but that comes with responsibilities. You are a part of this world now, and it is a part of you." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The bond had given him incredible power, but it had also tied him to the fate of this planet and its people. There would be no going back to his old life, no return to the simplicity of being just a starship captain. He was something more now, something both terrifying and beautiful. As they sat in the quiet of the jungle, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. The trials he had faced had forged him into something new, something stronger. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that whatever came next, he would face it with the strength of the bond he had forged and the support of the Zolani tribe. For the first time since the crash, Ethan Drake felt truly at home, not just on this alien planet, but within himself. The bond had given him purpose, and with it, he knew he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. 2 years had passed since Ethan Drake had crash-landed on the mysterious planet, a place he had come to know as much more than just a foreign world. It had become his home, a place where he had formed deep bonds with the Zolani tribe and with the planet itself. The bond he shared with the planet had grown stronger with each passing day, allowing him to thrive in ways he had never imagined. He had learned their ways, fought alongside them, and found a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. Yet, despite this profound connection, a part of him still yearned for the stars, for the life he had left behind. That yearning tugged at him, a persistent reminder of the world beyond this one. The signal. One evening, as the 3 suns dipped below the horizon, casting the jungle in hues of purple and gold, Ethan stood at the edge of the village, gazing up at the night sky. The stars were visible, twinkling like distant beacons in the vastness of space. He often found himself looking up, wondering what had become of the life he had left behind. Suddenly, a faint hum filled the air, a sound he hadn't heard in 2 years. His heart skipped a beat as he realized what it was. A signal, faint but unmistakable, cutting through the static of the planet's natural communication network. His wrist communicator, which had been silent since the crash, crackled to life, the garbled transmission barely audible. "Drake, anyone, rescue mission." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. A rescue mission. They had finally come for him. The thought sent a rush of conflicting emotions through him. Hope, fear, excitement, and a deep, gnawing uncertainty. The life he had known before, the life he had thought lost forever, was suddenly within reach again. He stood frozen for a moment, the implications of the signal sinking in. If he responded, if he made contact, it would mean leaving this world behind, leaving Lyria, the tribe, the bond, everything. But if he didn't, the opportunity might never come again. Before he could make a decision, Lyria appeared at his side. She had sensed his turmoil, as she always did. Her presence was a calming influence, but tonight, there was a sadness in her eyes, a reflection of the conflict within him. "You heard it, didn't you?" she asked softly, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken understanding. Ethan nodded, his gaze still fixed on the sky. "It's a rescue mission. They're looking for me." Lyria remained silent for a moment, then gently placed a hand on his arm. "I knew this day would come, Ethan. The bond we share, the connection you have with this planet. It's strong, but I always knew that your heart also belongs to the stars." Ethan turned to her, his eyes searching her face for any sign of anger or betrayal, but there was none. Only acceptance and, perhaps, a hint of sorrow. "What do I do, Lyria?" he asked, his voice betraying the confusion and fear he felt. "How can I just leave all of this behind?" Lyria smiled, a small, bittersweet smile. "You don't have to leave it behind, Ethan. The bond we share is not bound by distance. It will remain with you, no matter where you go. The planet has accepted you, and that connection will stay with you for the rest of your life. But I also know that you are a man of the stars, and your journey doesn't end here." Ethan felt tears welling in his eyes, and he quickly blinked them away. He had faced countless dangers, fought alongside the Zilani, and formed bonds that would last a lifetime. Yet the thought of leaving this place, of leaving Lyria, felt like tearing out a piece of his soul. "Will you come with me?" he asked, almost desperately, though he already knew the answer. Lyria shook her head gently. "My place is here, Ethan. I am the High Priestess of the Zilani, and my duty is to this tribe and this planet. But know this, you will always carry a piece of us with you, just as you will leave a piece of yourself here." Ethan looked into her eyes, searching for the strength he needed to make this decision, and in her gaze he found it, a deep, abiding love that transcended the physical, a bond that would endure no matter the distance between them. The farewell. The next morning, the entire village gathered to bid Ethan farewell. The atmosphere was somber yet filled with a sense of celebration, a recognition of the bond they all shared. The Zilani, who had once viewed him with suspicion and caution, now looked at him with respect and affection. As a final gift, Lyria presented Ethan with a small, intricately carved stone taken from the roots of the great tree. The stone pulsed faintly with the energy of the planet, a tangible reminder of the bond they shared. "This will keep you connected to us wherever you go," she explained, pressing the stone into his hand. "And if you ever need to find your way back, it will guide you." Ethan clutched the stone tightly, overwhelmed by the gesture. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Lyria stepped closer, her eyes meeting his. "I will miss you, Ethan. But I know this is not goodbye. Our paths will cross again, in this life or the next." He nodded, unable to find the words to express what he was feeling. Instead, he leaned in and kissed her, a tender, lingering kiss that spoke of all the things he couldn't say. When they finally parted, there were tears in both of their eyes, but there was also a sense of peace. As the rescue ship descended from the sky, Ethan turned to face the tribe one last time. He could feel their emotions through the bond. Sadness, pride, love. He would miss them more than he could ever put into words. With a final nod to Lyria, Ethan walked towards the ship, each step heavy with the weight of the decision he had made. The ship's ramp lowered, and he paused at the threshold, taking one last look at the world that had become his home. The jungle was alive with color and sound, the trees swaying gently in the breeze, the air filled with the songs of alien birds. It was a place of beauty and danger, a world that had changed him in ways he could never have imagined. And as he stepped onto the ship, he knew that no matter where his journey took him, he would carry this place, these people, and this bond with him always. The journey home. The ship lifted off, rising slowly through the atmosphere. Ethan watched through the viewport as the village and the jungle receded into the distance, becoming a small, verdant patch in a sea of purple and gold. His heart ached with the loss, but there was also a sense of closure, of having completed one chapter of his life and beginning another. As they broke through the planet's atmosphere and into the cold expanse of space, the stars stretched out before him, vast and endless. For the first time in 2 years, Ethan felt the familiar pull of the cosmos, the excitement of exploration and the unknown, but now it was tempered with the wisdom he had gained from the Zilani, the understanding that the universe was not just something to be conquered, but something to be connected with, cherished, and protected. The crew of the rescue ship, unfamiliar faces from a familiar world, greeted him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. They had heard stories of the Zilani, of the mysterious planet in the Orion sector, but they could never truly understand what Ethan had experienced. He knew that he would carry those memories with him, guarding them as precious treasures that no one else could fully comprehend. As the ship set a course for Alliance space, Ethan took out the stone that Lyria had given him. It pulsed softly in his hand, a reminder of the bond that would always connect him to the planet and to the tribe. He closed his eyes, focusing on the energy within the stone, and in his mind he could hear the whispers of the trees, the rustle of the jungle, and the soft, reassuring voice of Lyria. "You are never alone, Ethan. We are always with you." He smiled, a deep, contented smile, and for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The stars awaited him, and though his path was uncertain, he knew that he would face whatever came next with the strength and wisdom he had gained from his time with the Zilani. The journey home had begun, but a part of Ethan Drake would forever remain on that distant, mysterious world, bound by a bond that transcended space and time. Epilogue: The Echo of the Bond Months. Later, Ethan stood on the bridge of a new starship, his new command after being reinstated by the Alliance. The crew bustled around him, but his thoughts were elsewhere, on the planet he had left behind, and on the bond that still pulsed faintly within him. As he gazed out at the stars, a familiar warmth spread through him, and he knew that the bond had not faded. It had simply changed, evolved into something new. He was still connected to the Zilani, to Lyria, and to the planet, and that connection gave him strength, guiding him as he ventured into the unknown once more. He took out the stone, feeling its gentle pulse in his hand, and smiled. No matter where his journey took him, he would always have a home, a place where he was understood and loved, a place where his heart could rest. And with that thought, he gave the order to engage the engines, and the ship leaped forward into the stars, carrying him into a future filled with endless possibilities, guided by the bond that would forever connect him to the wild tribe of alien beauties who had changed his life forever.